Alright, so in part 5, what we're going to be doing is basically editing the app, making it a little harder. We're going to speed up the clock for the pipes. Also, if you want to adjust the size, if the pipe coming down is too long, you could always delete it from the list. So we're going to just basically, it's an iterative process making an app. You're always trying to make it better and improve upon it. So that's what we're going to do here. So let's go to the blocks. We're going to add another procedure. And we're going to name it speed up pipe. And we're going to go to the controls and use the if then block, and we want to test the score value label. So we want to get the score value text, and we'll go to math and we'll get the equal sign, and let's do this. Let's change it to the greater than. So if the score value label, if our score text is greater than, let's say 5, we'll type in 5, then we want to set the top pipe clock and bottom pipe clocks. So let's do this. We're going to set the timer interval. I'll duplicate this, change it to the bottom pipe clock. So these are the ones that basically speed up, or they control the speed of the pipes moving. And we're going to use the subtraction. So we're going to take, I'll duplicate this, we're going to take the value of the timer interval for those, and we're going to subtract an amount. So we need to go back, top pipe timer interval. I'm going to duplicate this one, change it to the bottom pipe clock, and we're going to subtract. I'm going to try 10 at first. Okay. And once we have that set up, we can duplicate, and we can change the score here, and you can change this value. I'm just going to leave it at 10 for now, because we know that if it's greater than 10, then both of these will happen. So it'll be in effect subtracting 20 once it gets over 10. So I'm just going to leave it like that. This procedure by itself won't do anything. We need to go to procedures and get the call speed up pipe, and we're going to add it when the pipe and the collision block collide here. So I'm just going to drop it down here, and this will, I also want to duplicate it and add it as well to the collide block top. So when the top as well as the bottom pipes collide with their respective collision blocks, it'll call that procedure to happen. Okay, and the result you should get is that the pipes move faster, makes the game harder. Okay. Another element I want us to add is adding in a worm that the bird can collect. So we're going to go to drawing and animation and add in an image sprite. And we're going to name this image sprite worm1, and we're going to upload a picture of the worm. So you want to go to picture, under your properties, choose file, go to the 506 App Inventor folder, Crazy Birds folder, and worm, and just get the first one there. They're basically just different colored worms that I've made. And let's see, I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to put it to 20 by 20 pixels, so it's a little smaller. I think that's a good size. But basically it'll follow, hopefully, behind the pipe here, and when you eat it, or when you get it, what we want it to do is like give us a higher score. So we can make it set to like 5. So let's go ahead and set up the blocks for that. And actually we also, to make it move, we need to set up a timer. So we need to go back. We'll drag in a clock. And down at the bottom, let's rename it. I'm going to name it worm 1 clock so we know it's for this worm 1 here. And let's go ahead and set it up. So we'll go down worm 1 clock here. When the worm 1 clock timer goes off, we want it to move the worm. So we're going to we'll go to worm 1 here. And we want to set the worm 1's X because we want it to move along the X axis. And we're going to get the subtraction sign because we want it to move from right to left. So we're going to take the worm's X and I'm just going to try out 10 and test it out and see. And basically what I also need to do, I'm going to go back to the designer. I'm going to add a collision sensor for that. So I'm going to go to drawing and animation and I'm going to add in an image sprite here. And I'm going to upload, I'm going to name this collision sensor. And this is going to be for each of the worms. Oh, I've already got it in there. Okay. So I'm going to select the collision sensor. I guess we've already put it in. That was that big long one. It's already in there. Okay. Alright, so let's set it up so that it'll work with the worm. We're going to get the controls and do if then. And we're going to go to worm 1. And once you have 1 set up, you can do this for each of the worms. There's 4 in there. We want to get the call worm 1 collide with block. And we're specifically going to name, we want it to collide with the collision sensor. And the collision sensor is that big long image sprite that takes up the entire height of the canvas. So if the worm 1 collides with the collision sensor, then we want to move it back. So we're going to go back to worm 1 and we are going to call worm 1 move to, and we're going to set some values for the X and the Y. So we're going to set it for the X, we'll try out 260, and then for the Y we're going to try 90. Okay. Let's go ahead and open up the emulator and test it out, and then we'll go from there, and then we'll need a setup when the bird touches it that it scores. So let's test it out first and we can see if we need to change these numbers up. Okay, so I have my emulator up. My worm is moving. It's moving slowly, but it's moving. Basically, just want to show you guys the worm 1. I set the X, it's at 262, and then the Y is at 55. I would start with the worm 1 up here, and then for the timer on it, I left it at every second, so it should be moving 10 every second. If that's too slow, you can always adjust it. So instead of 10, you could subtract a greater number, like 30. And then it should, when we restart it here, it should move a lot faster. The only thing we need to do is basically set up the score for it. So when the bird touches it. So we want to find, you want to find your Flappy Bird or Crazy Bird colliding with the pipe. I'm going to find this block here, and basically we're going to add another if-then block underneath it. And I'm going to duplicate this. So we want to set it up so that the bird is now colliding with worm 1. And these will be different. So we want to set the worm's visibility to false. I'm going to grab one of the visibility blocks and duplicate it. I'm going to switch it to, it needs to be worm 1. So I'm just going to go, I'll delete this, just go to worm 1. So when the bird collides with the worm, we want to set the visibility to false so that the bird goes away. Or not the bird, the worm. So we want to set that to false. And we also want to change the score value label. So score value label text, let's use the plus sign. And we're going to take the get global score, so you want to duplicate it from in your project. And let's give, when we touch the worm, let's give it a greater value. Let's just do 5. So it'll increase it by 5. So when the bird collides with the worm will be invisible and the score will go up by 5. And we need our update score procedure to occur. So let's duplicate that. And we need our worm to become visible again. So what we could do, we could set up, I guess you could do it however you want. You could have a, let's just leave it like that so that as you add more worms in, you can collect them all. And then eventually you could set up a button that when you press it, the worms would come back. Or you could have a timer. Let's try this. Let's do a timer. So we'll add in a clock. We'll name the clock worm reset. This will be the worm reset clock, and we'll set it to 10,000. So every 10 seconds it'll refresh the worms. So we'll take our worm reset clock, and when it goes off, it's going to make the worm visible again. So we'll go up to worm 1. Set worm visibility, and it'll set it back to true. So every 10 seconds it'll set the worm's visibility back to true if it's turned off. Okay, and that way you can keep playing it. You want to add in the other 3 worms, and you can add any other kind of touches you want to your crazy birds, but that is it for part 5.